The morning sun rose over New Haven Colony like it had every day for the past 15 years. Lisa Martinez stood at her kitchen window, watching her 7-year-old daughter Katie play in their small garden. The little girl was talking to something that looked like a tall crystal sculpture, but Lisa knew better. It was one of the Zephyrians, the alien beings who shared this planet with the human settlers. Katie had always been special. Most humans could barely see the Zephyrians clearly, let alone talk to them. But Katie could do both. She could feel what they felt and share thoughts with them. The doctors back on Earth would have called it impossible. Here on Kepler 442b, it was just another part of daily life. Lisa sipped her morning coffee and smiled. Life on New Haven was good. The colony had grown from a few hundred brave souls to over 3,000 people. They had farms, schools, hospitals, and even small factories. The Zephyrians had helped them understand the planet's strange properties. The ground here was full of crystals that could store and share energy in ways human science barely understood. The Zephyrians were nothing like the aliens in old Earth movies. They were tall and thin, with bodies that seemed to be made of living crystal. They moved slowly and spoke in whispers. They never fought or argued. They shared their knowledge freely and asked for nothing in return. They seemed to find humans interesting, especially human children. Lisa worked as a xenobiologist, which meant she studied alien life forms. Most of her work involved the Zephyrians, but she also cataloged the many strange plants and animals that lived on this world. It was good work, important work. Every discovery helped make life easier for the colonists. Katie ran up to the window and pressed her face against the glass. "Mom, Shimmer wants to show me something cool today. Can we go to the crystal fields?" Lisa looked at her daughter's bright eyes and couldn't say no. Shimmer was Katie's name for one of the younger Zephyrians. The alien being had been Katie's friend since the girl was 4 years old. Lisa still found it amazing that her daughter could form such a bond with a completely different species. "After breakfast and after I finish my morning reports," Lisa said. "And you have to promise to stay close to me." Katie bounced up and down with excitement. I promise, I promise." Lisa finished her coffee and got ready for another normal day. She had no idea that high above their heads, something was watching New Haven Colony. Something that had traveled across the galaxy, looking for new prey to hunt. The day started like any other in the research district. Lisa checked her equipment and reviewed her notes from the previous day. She was studying how the planet's crystals affected plant growth. The results were fascinating. Plants here grew 3 times faster than they should, and many developed properties that were impossible on other worlds. Jake Collins, the colony administrator, called a meeting for all department heads at 10 in the morning. Lisa gathered her data and walked to the main administration building. The building was made from local stone and crystal, giving it a unique blue-green glow in the sunlight. Inside the conference room, Lisa found the usual group of people who kept the colony running. There was Roy Henderson, the head of Colonial Defense. Alan Foster ran the physics department. Mary Kim managed agriculture and David Price handled engineering. Jake looked worried as everyone sat down. He was a big man with gray hair and kind eyes, but today those eyes were full of concern. "People, we have a situation," Jake said. "Our deep space sensors picked up something last night. There's a ship coming toward our system, a big ship." Roy Henderson leaned forward. "How big are we talking about?" "Bigger than anything we've ever seen. Our computers estimate it's at least 5 kilometers long. It's not human, and it's not Zephyrian. The design is completely unknown." Lisa felt a cold chill run down her back. "Are they responding to our communication attempts?" Jake shook his head. "Nothing, dead silence. They're still 3 days out, but they're heading straight for us." Alan Foster pushed his glasses up his nose. "Could it be explorers like us? Maybe. They're just curious about our colony." "Maybe," Roy said, but his voice didn't sound convinced. "But I want everyone to be ready for anything. I'm putting our defense systems on alert and calling up the militia." Lisa thought about Katie playing with Shimmer in their garden. The idea of danger coming to their peaceful world seemed impossible. The Zephyrians had told them that this part of space was quiet and safe. No aggressive species were supposed to be anywhere near here. "What do the Zephyrians say about this?" she asked. Jake looked even more worried. That's the strange part. They seem scared. I've never seen them scared of anything before. They keep saying something about the hunters from the dark between stars. Whatever that means. The meeting ended with everyone agreeing to continue normal operations while staying alert. Lisa went back to her lab, but she couldn't focus on her work. She kept thinking about the fear in Jake's voice and the way the Zephyrians had reacted to news of the approaching ship. That afternoon, Lisa and Katie went to the crystal fields as promised. The area was about 2 kilometers from the main colony, in a valley filled with natural crystal formations. The crystals sang in the wind, creating beautiful music that seemed to calm everyone who heard it. Katie ran ahead to meet Shimmer, who was waiting near a large blue crystal. Lisa watched as her daughter and the alien being seemed to have a conversation without words. Their friendship still amazed her after all these years. "What's Shimmer telling you?" Lisa asked as she caught up. Katie's face was serious. "Shimmer says the crystal music is changing. Something bad is coming that will try to hurt people. But Shimmer doesn't know how to fight." Lisa knelt down beside her daughter. "Don't worry, sweetheart. The grown-ups will handle whatever comes. Your job is just to be a kid and have fun." But even as she said the words, Lisa looked up at the clear blue sky and wondered what was hiding in the darkness of space above them. She had no way of knowing that in less than 3 days her quiet life would be turned upside down. She had no way of knowing that she was about to discover something about herself and about humanity that would change the galaxy forever. The crystal formations around them continued their gentle singing, but Lisa thought she could hear a new note in their music, something that sounded almost like a warning. The massive ship moved through space like a living thing. Its hull was not made of metal, but of something that looked like bone and flesh fused together. Strange lights pulsed along its sides like a heartbeat. Inside the ship, creatures that had no name in human language prepared for their favorite activity. The hunt. Vextar the Render stood on the command deck of his bioship. He was nearly 10 feet tall, with skin-like armor plating and claws that could cut through steel. His people, the Kethvar, were the greatest hunters in the known galaxy. They traveled from world to world, seeking new prey to test their skills against. "Tell me about these humans," Vextar said to his ship's living computer. The computer was a creature bred specifically to process information, its brain the size of a room. "They are a young species from a world they call Earth," the computer replied in a voice like grinding stone. "They have spread to several worlds in the past century. Reports say they defeated the Confederation fleet in multiple battles." Vextar's eyes glowed with interest. The Confederation had been strong warriors. Any species that could beat them might provide good sport. What else do we know? They are physically weak compared to most species. They have no natural armor, no claws, no venom. They rely on tools and weapons. But there are stories that suggest they fight with unusual determination when threatened. And they're young? Their offspring are helpless for many years. They invest much time and energy in protecting their children. This could be used against them. Vextar smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth. The Kethvar had learned long ago that the best way to test a species was to threaten what they valued most. Fear and anger made prey fight harder, providing better sport. "Show me their colony," he commanded. A section of the ship's wall became transparent, showing the blue-green world. Below, the human settlement was small and looked fragile. Vextar could see their simple buildings and farming areas. It looked like it would be easy to destroy. But Vextar didn't want easy. He wanted a challenge. 3 days after the ship had been detected, it entered orbit around New Haven. The colonists watched in fear as the enormous vessel blocked out part of the sun. Its shadow fell across the settlement like a dark promise. Roy Henderson stood in the colony's small defense center, staring at screens that showed the alien ship. His 12 security officers looked nervous. They had trained for emergencies, but nothing had prepared them for this. "It's not responding to any of our signals," reported Jenny Walsh, the communications officer. "I've tried every frequency, every language in our database. Nothing." Roy nodded grimly. The colony's defenses were designed to handle pirates or small, Raiding parties. They had 6 defensive turrets and 1 small patrol ship. Against something the size of the vessel overhead, they might as well throw rocks. "Sir," called out Pete Morgan from the sensor station. "Something's launching from the ship. Multiple objects heading for the surface." Roy watched as small craft descended from the mothership. They moved in a formation that looked disturbingly like hunting animals surrounding their prey. On the main screen, the landing craft touched down in 3 different locations around the colony. They were sleek, organic-looking things that seemed to grow out of the ground once they landed. No doors opened, no ramps extended. Instead, the craft simply dissolved, releasing their passengers. The first humans to see the HFY thought they were looking at nightmares made real. The aliens were massive reptilian predators with natural armor and claws like swords. They moved with the fluid grace of perfect hunters. Their eyes glowed red in the dim light of evening. But they didn't attack immediately. Instead, they spread out around the colony and began to watch. Dr. Alan Foster had set up monitoring equipment to study the alien ship. What his instruments showed him made no sense. The ship's hull was alive, it was breathing. The smaller craft that had landed were also biological, not mechanical. "This is incredible," he told Lisa over the communicator. "Their technology isn't built, it's grown. The ship is actually a living creature of some kind." Lisa was at home with Katie, both of them watching the news reports with growing fear. The Zephyrians had vanished completely. Not one of the crystal beings could be found anywhere in the colony. "Mom," Katie said in a small voice. "Shimmer is scared. All the Zephyrians are hiding deep under the ground. They say the hunters have come." "Hunters?" Lisa pulled her daughter close. "What do you mean?" Katie closed her eyes, the way she did when she was trying to hear the Zephyrians' thoughts. "They say these aliens hunt other creatures for fun. They like to make their prey scared before they kill them. The Zephyrians have never learned to fight, so they can only hide." Outside, the first screams began. The HFY had decided to test human responses. They grabbed Tom Bradley, a farmer who was working late in his fields. The man's terrified cries echoed across the colony as he was dragged away into the darkness. Roy Henderson led a rescue team out immediately, but they found nothing. No trace of Tom, no sign of where he had been taken. Only claw marks in the dirt and the lingering smell of something alien and predatory. "They're playing with us," Roy told Jake Collins over the radio. "This isn't a normal attack. They could have destroyed the colony already if they wanted to. Instead, they're testing us." More colonists disappeared over the next 2 days. Always people who were alone or in small groups. Always at the edge of the settlement. The HFY were learning human patrol patterns, human response times, human weaknesses. Vextar watched it all from his ship with growing interest. These humans were more interesting than he had expected. They were frightened, as all prey should be, but they didn't panic. They organized, they adapted. They protected their weak and searched for their missing. Most importantly, they got angry. The HFY commander had hunted hundreds of species across the galaxy. Most prey animals either fled in terror or attacked blindly when threatened. Humans did neither. They planned, they prepared, they worked together. "Fascinating," Vexitar said to his second-in-command, a scarred warrior named Kreshtal. "Watch how they move their young and elderly to the center of their settlement. See how they organize patrol patterns that overlap and support each other. They're adapting to us." "Should we increase pressure?" Kreshtal asked. "Not yet. I want to understand them better first. Tell me, what have our scouts learned about the human offspring with the unusual abilities?" Kreshtal consulted a biomechanical device that pulsed with living light. "The female child can communicate with the native crystal beings. This ability appears to be rare among humans. She would make a unique trophy." Vexitar's eyes gleamed. "Perfect. When we take this child, we will learn exactly how fierce these humans can become. The mother's response will tell us everything we need to know about their species." He didn't know that by targeting Katie Martinez, he was about to unleash something that would change his understanding of the universe itself. He didn't know that some instincts run deeper than physics, deeper than reality. He was about to learn that a human mother protecting her child could bend the very laws of nature. The hunt was about to begin in earnest, but the Kethvar had no idea who the real predator would turn out to be. Lisa Martinez checked her equipment one more time. The portable scanner was working properly and her sample containers were all sealed and labeled. She looked over at Katie, who was sitting on a rock formation, swinging her legs and humming quietly to herself. "Ready to go, sweetheart?" Lisa asked. Katie nodded and jumped down from the rocks. Shimmer said the crystals in Whispering Valley are singing new songs today, different ones. They were 2 kilometers from the main colony, in an area that had always been considered safe. The valley got its name from the way the wind moved through the crystal formations, creating sounds like distant voices. Lisa had been studying the crystals here for 3 years, and she knew every formation by heart. The morning was beautiful. The sun cast rainbow patterns through the crystals, and the air was clean and cool. It seemed impossible that somewhere above them alien predators were planning an attack. Lisa had tried to talk Jake Collins into canceling all research trips outside the colony. But Jake had pointed out that they couldn't stop living just because there might be danger. The colonists still needed food, still needed supplies, still needed to understand their world. Life had to go on. Besides, Lisa was only going to be gone for a few hours. She had her emergency communicator, her position beacon, and her weapon. If anything went wrong, the colony's security team could reach her in minutes. She had no way of knowing that the Kethvar had been watching her routine for days. She didn't know that they had identified her as the mother of the special child. She didn't know that Vextar had chosen this exact time and place to begin his real hunt. Katie wandered among the crystal formations, running her fingers along their smooth surfaces. The crystals responded to her touch with faint glowing patterns, something that still amazed Lisa after all these years. "Mom, listen," Katie said suddenly. Lisa stopped her work and listened. The crystal formations were making their usual music, but there was something different about it today. The harmonics seemed off, like an orchestra with one instrument out of tune. "That's strange," Lisa murmured. She pulled out her sonic analyzer and began taking readings. The crystals were resonating at frequencies she'd never recorded before. High, above them, invisible to human eyes, a Kethvar bioship released a special kind of weapon. It wasn't designed to kill or destroy. Instead, it created an energy field that interfered with electronic devices. The field settled over Whispering Valley like a blanket, cutting off all communication with the outside world. Lisa's emergency beacon died first. Then her communicator went silent. Her portable scanner flickered and shut down. Even her watch stopped working. "Mom?" Katie's voice was small and scared. "Something's wrong. I can't hear the Zephyrians anymore. It's like they're all gone." Lisa felt ice-cold fear shoot through her body. She grabbed Katie's hand and started walking quickly toward the valley entrance. "We're leaving. Now." But they were too late. 3 shapes emerged from behind the crystal formations. They moved without sound, despite their enormous size. Lisa had seen pictures of the Kethvar from the colony's databases, but seeing them in person was completely different. They were nightmares made real, 10 feet of muscle and bone and predatory intelligence. The largest of the 3 was covered in scars and wore trophies from dozens of different species. His eyes glowed red as he looked at Lisa and Katie with obvious hunger. This was Vextar the Render, though Lisa didn't know his name. "Run, Katie!" Lisa shouted, pushing her daughter behind her. But there was nowhere to run. The Kethvar had positioned themselves to block all exits from the valley. They moved with the patient confidence of apex predators who knew their prey was trapped. Lisa pulled out her plasma cutter, the tool she used to take crystal samples. It wasn't designed as a weapon, but it was the only thing she had. She activated the cutting beam and held it in front of her like a sword. Vextar found this amusing. He had seen many species try to fight with inadequate weapons. The small human female looked brave, but bravery without strength was just entertainment. "You cannot escape," Vextar said in heavily accented human speech. "We have studied your Kind. You are weak. You have no claws, no armor, no venom. You are prey animals pretending to be predators. Stay away from my daughter, Lisa said. Her voice was steady, but her hands were shaking. Your offspring is special, Vextar continued, taking a slow step forward. She can speak to the crystal beings. She will make an interesting trophy. You may watch as we take her. Katie pressed against her mother's back, tears streaming down her face. She tried to call out to the Zephyrians with her mind, but the alien, dampening field blocked her abilities just like it blocked the electronic devices. Lisa swung the plasma cutter at the nearest HFY warrior. The beam sliced across his arm, cutting through armor plating and drawing alien blood. The warrior roared in pain and surprise. They hadn't expected the weak human to actually hurt them, but one small wound meant nothing against three massive predators. The wounded warrior struck back with his claws, opening deep cuts across Lisa's shoulder. She cried out in pain but didn't drop her weapon. For several minutes, Lisa fought like a wild animal. She used her plasma cutter to keep the HFY at a distance while trying to shield Katie behind her. She was faster than they expected, and more vicious. She fought not just for her own life, but for her child's life, and that made her dangerous, in ways the aliens hadn't anticipated. But she was only human. She was small and weak and badly outnumbered. Slowly, the HFY wore her down. Her plasma cutter began to overheat from constant use. Her shoulder was bleeding badly. She was getting tired while her enemies seemed as fresh as when the fight began. Vextar grew bored with the game. He had learned what he wanted to know about human defensive instincts. Now it was time to claim his prize. The HFY commander moved faster than Lisa could react. One massive hand knocked the plasma cutter from her grip. The other hand grabbed her by the throat and lifted her off the ground. You fought well for prey, Vextar said. But now you will watch as we take what belongs to us. He threw Lisa aside like a broken toy. She hit a crystal formation hard and crumpled to the ground, dazed and bleeding. Through blurred vision, she watched Vextar reach for Katie. Mommy! Katie screamed as enormous claws closed around her small body. That scream hit Lisa like lightning. It cut through her pain, through her exhaustion, through her despair. It reached something deep inside her that was older than civilization, older than humanity itself. The part of her that was pure mother, pure protector, pure fury at anything that threatened her child. Lisa's second scream was nothing human. It was the sound of a mother's rage-given voice, amplified by love and desperation and absolute refusal to let her daughter be taken. The sound echoed off the crystal formations, and something impossible happened. The crystals began to resonate with her scream. The resonance spread through the underground crystal networks that connected every part of the planet. The harmonic vibrations reached frequencies that touched the basic structure of space and time itself. Reality hiccuped. Time began to slow down around Lisa Martinez. Vexitar's movements became sluggish. Katie's tears hung in the air like diamonds. The other HFY warriors moved like they were walking through thick honey, and then time stopped completely. Everything froze except Lisa. She stood up slowly, watching dust particles hang motionless in the air around her. Vextar was locked in place, holding Katie, both of them as still as statues. The world had become a photograph, and she was the only thing in it that could still move. Lisa didn't understand what had happened. She didn't need to understand. All that mattered was that she had been given a chance to save her daughter. She wasn't going to waste it. She looked at the frozen scene around her and began to plan. Somewhere in the back of her mind, she knew this couldn't last forever. Whatever force had stopped time would eventually let go. When that happened, she needed to be ready. The mother's true fight was about to begin. Lisa stood in a world of perfect silence. No wind moved through the crystals. No birds sang in the distance. Even her own heartbeat seemed muted and strange. Everything around her was frozen like a picture, but she could move normally. She walked, carefully around the motionless figures of the HFY warriors. Vextar stood like a statue, his claws wrapped around Katie's small body. Her daughter's face was frozen in mid-scream. Tears caught halfway down her cheeks like tiny crystals. Lisa reached out to touch Vextar's armored hand. It felt real and solid, but she couldn't move it at all. It was like trying to push a mountain. The alien's skin was warm, so he wasn't dead, just completely stopped in time. She tried to pull Katie free, but her daughter was just as frozen as her captor. Lisa could touch Katie's face and feel her warmth, but she couldn't move her or change her position in any way. Fear started to build in Lisa's chest. What if Katie was trapped like this forever? What if time never started again? What if she had saved her daughter from being taken only to lock her in a nightmare that would never end? Lisa forced herself to stay calm. Panic wouldn't help Katie. She needed to think clearly and figure out what to do. She walked to the edge of the valley and looked toward the colony. Everything was frozen there too. She could see birds hanging motionless in the sky and leaves that had stopped falling halfway to the ground. A transport vehicle was locked in place on the road, its driver probably wondering why his engine had suddenly died. Whatever had happened wasn't just affecting the valley. It was bigger than that. Maybe much bigger. Lisa walked back to her equipment. Her plasma cutter lay where Vextar had knocked it from her hands. She picked it up and was relieved to find that it still worked. The frozen world didn't seem to affect things that had been moving when time stopped. She examined the HFY warriors more carefully. Their armor was some kind of biological material, grown rather than manufactured. It had weak points at the joints and around the neck area. Lisa had studied enough alien anatomy to recognize vulnerable spots when she saw them, but killing the frozen aliens wouldn't solve her real problem. She needed to get Katie away from them, and she needed time to start moving again. More than that, she needed to make sure that when time did restart, she would be ready for whatever came next. Lisa looked at her watch. It had stopped working when the alien dampening field activated, so she couldn't tell how long she had been in this frozen world. But she could feel something pulling at her, like a tide trying to drag her back into normal time. Whatever force was keeping her unstuck wouldn't last forever. She decided to run back to the colony and get help. Moving through the frozen world felt strange. It was like walking underwater with resistance that made every step an effort. But she could do it. The trip that normally took 20 minutes stretched into what felt like an hour. Lisa had to rest, several times fighting against the invisible force that tried to slow her down. When she finally reached the colony, she found it exactly as she had expected, everyone and everything frozen in place. In the medical center, she found Dr. Rachel Green standing over a patient with a surgical instrument in her hand. Rachel was frozen mid-operation, but her equipment was still available. Lisa gathered medical supplies, painkillers, and stimulants. She took a portable oxygen unit and an emergency medical kit. If she was going to face the HFY when time restarted, she wanted to be as ready as possible. She went to her laboratory next. Here she found the tools and chemicals she knew best. Lisa had spent years studying alien biology and biochemistry. She understood how organic systems worked, how they could be disrupted, how they could be damaged. The HFY used biological technology. That meant their equipment was alive, and alive things could be poisoned. Lisa mixed compounds that she knew would interfere with organic computer systems. She created a concentrated acid that would eat through biological armor. She prepared neurotoxins that would disrupt nerve functions in most carbon-based life forms. None of this was technically illegal, but it wasn't the kind of thing a peaceful researcher was supposed to know how to make. Lisa had learned it during her advanced training, back when humanity was still worried about hostile alien contact. She also took Katie's emergency beacon and reprogrammed it to send out the strongest possible distress signal. When time restarted, she wanted every security officer in the colony to know exactly where to find them. The trip back to Whispering Valley was even harder than the trip to the colony. Lisa was carrying extra equipment, and the strange resistance seemed stronger. She felt like she was walking through thick mud that got thicker with every step. Several times she almost gave up. The invisible force pulling at her was getting stronger. She could feel reality trying to reassert itself, trying to drag her back into the normal flow of time. But every time she started to weaken, she looked at the equipment in her hands and remembered Katie's frozen scream. Her daughter was depending on her. That gave her strength to keep going. When she finally made it back to the valley, she found everything exactly as she had left it. Vextar still held Katie in his massive claws. The other Kethvar warriors stood in their attack positions. Nothing had changed except that Lisa now had weapons that could actually hurt them. She positioned her improvised chemical bombs around the frozen aliens. The neurotoxin dispensers went near their heads, where they could affect the warriors' nervous systems most quickly. The acid charges were placed against their armor at critical points. Lisa put the reprogrammed emergency beacon in Katie's pocket. She gave herself an injection of stimulants and painkillers, knowing she was probably going to need both very soon. Finally, she stood between Vextar and the valley entrance, holding her most powerful weapon. It was a concentrated acid compound that would eat through almost any biological material. She only had one shot with it, so she would have to make it count. As she made her preparations, Lisa tried to understand what had happened to her. The crystals in the valley resonated with sound and emotion. Katie's empathic abilities let her connect with the planet's crystal network. When Lisa had screamed in rage and desperation, somehow that combination had affected the basic structure of reality. She didn't need to understand the science. All that mattered was using this impossible gift to save her daughter. Lisa closed her eyes and reached out with her mind the way she had seen Katie do so many times. She tried to connect with the crystal network that covered the planet. She pushed every ounce of her love for Katie, her determination to protect her, her absolute refusal to let the Kethvar take her child. The crystals around her began to glow faintly. Lisa felt the planet responding to her emotions, ready to bend reality again if necessary. She was a human mother defending her young, and she had learned that the universe itself would help her if her need was great enough. The pulling sensation was getting stronger. Time was about to restart, and when it did, the Kethvar were going to discover that they had made a terrible mistake. They had threatened a human child. Now they were going to face a human mother who had the power to stop time itself. Time returned to the world like a thunderclap. The frozen scene exploded back into motion. Vextar completed his grab for Katie, but suddenly found empty air where the child had been a moment before. The other Kethvar warriors stumbled as their nervous systems were flooded with neurotoxins from Lisa's hidden dispensers. Lisa stood directly in front of Vextar, her improvised acid weapon aimed at his chest. The Kethvar commander had a split second to register surprise before the concentrated chemical compound hit his armor and began eating through it like it was made of paper. Vextar roared in pain and rage as the acid burned through his natural armor plating. He swung his massive claws at Lisa, but she was no longer the exhausted, wounded woman he had thrown aside minutes before. The stimulants in her system gave her speed and strength, while the painkillers let her ignore her injuries. She ducked under his swing and drove her plasma cutter deep into the gap the acid had created in his armor. Alien blood, green and thick, poured out as Vextar stumbled backward. The other two Kethvar warriors were convulsing as the neurotoxins attacked their biological systems. Their biomechanical equipment sparked and died as the organic computers that controlled them shut down. One warrior fell to his knees, clawing at his head as his nervous system overloaded. The other tried to reach Lisa but collapsed before he could take 3 steps. Katie's emergency beacon activated, sending out a distress signal that could be heard across the entire colony. Within seconds, every security officer, every militia member, and every armed colonist would know exactly where to find them. But Lisa wasn't finished. She stood over the wounded Vextar, her plasma cutter humming with energy, and spoke in a voice that carried the force of her fury across the valley. "You wanted to hunt my daughter," she said. "You wanted to take my child as a trophy. Now you know what happens when you threaten a human mother." Her words echoed off the crystal formations, and something extraordinary happened. The resonance that had stopped time was still there, still connected to Lisa's emotions, but now instead of desperation, she felt pure protective rage. That rage traveled through the crystal network, through the planet's core, and up into space itself. On the orbiting Kethvar bioship, every alien warrior suddenly experienced something they had never felt before, the terror of being prey. Lisa's psychic scream, amplified by the planet's crystal network, hit them like a physical force. Their biomechanical systems began to malfunction as their own ship recoiled from the psychic assault. Vextar, bleeding green blood onto the crystal formations, looked up at Lisa with new understanding. He had hunted across the galaxy for over a century. He had faced warriors from 1,000 different worlds, but he had never encountered anything like the fury of a human mother protecting her child. "What are you?" he whispered. "I'm Katie's mom," Lisa replied simply, "and I will kill anything that tries to hurt her." The sound of vehicles approaching echoed across the valley. Roy Henderson and his security team were racing to respond to the emergency beacon, but they would find the fight already over. Katie ran to her mother, tears streaming down her face. Lisa dropped her weapon and pulled her daughter into her arms, holding her tight against her chest. "Are you hurt, sweetheart?" Lisa asked, checking Katie for injuries. "I'm okay, Mom, but the Zephyrians felt what happened. They're not scared anymore. They say the crystal song has changed. They say you taught the whole planet how to be angry." Lisa looked around at the crystal formations. They were glowing brighter than she had ever seen before, pulsing with energy that seemed to match her own heartbeat. The Whispering Valley had become something new, something that remembered the fury of a mother defending her child. Roy Henderson arrived with 12 security officers, all of them armed and ready for battle. What they found was 3 dying HFY warriors, a wounded alien commander, and Lisa Martinez holding her daughter and covered in green blood. "Lisa, what happened here?" Roy asked, staring at the scene in amazement. "They tried to take Katie," Lisa said calmly. "I stopped them." Roy looked at the massive alien predators, then at the small human woman who had somehow defeated them. He had known Lisa for 8 years. She was a quiet scientist who studied plants and crystals. She wasn't a warrior. But looking at her now, holding her daughter and standing over the fallen aliens, Roy realized he had never really understood what humans were capable of when their children were threatened. High above them, the HFY bioship was preparing to leave orbit. The psychic assault had damaged their organic systems and left their crew traumatized. They sent a single message to the colony before departing, a formal acknowledgement of defeat. In HFY culture, this was the highest honor they could give. They were admitting that they had found prey that was actually a predator. They were acknowledging that humans were not to be hunted. Vextar, despite his wounds, managed to perform a ritual that Roy's translator couldn't fully interpret. It seemed to be some kind of salute or mark of respect. Then the alien commander activated a device that teleported him back to his ship. As the massive biovessel disappeared into hyperspace, it carried with it a warning that would spread across the galaxy. Humans were far more dangerous than they appeared, not because of their weapons or their technology, but because of their capacity to love so fiercely that reality itself would bend to protect what they cherished. In the days that followed, xenobiologists and physicists from across human space came to study what had happened in Whispering Valley. They found evidence of temporal distortion, quantum fluctuations, and energy patterns that shouldn't have been possible. Dr. Alan Foster spent weeks trying to understand how a human mother's emotional state had somehow affected the basic structure of space-time. He never found a complete answer, but his research led to new discoveries about the connection between consciousness and quantum mechanics. The Zephyrians emerged from hiding with a new understanding of their human neighbors. They had always known that humans were different from other species, but they hadn't understood how different. Now they spoke of humans as the ones who can make the universe listen when they love. Lisa went back to her quiet life as a researcher, but she was changed by what had happened. She had learned something about herself and about humanity that she would carry for the rest of her life. She had learned that some instincts run deeper than physics, and that a mother's love could literally move the universe. Katie grew up knowing that her mother had stopped time itself to save her. As she got older, she developed even stronger empathic abilities, eventually becoming the first human to fully communicate with multiple alien species. Some said this was because of her exposure to the temporal distortion, but Lisa knew better. Her daughter was special because she was loved completely and absolutely by someone who would do anything to protect her. And in a universe full of dangers, that was the greatest gift any parent could give their child. Word of the incident spread through both human and alien networks. Other predator species quietly removed human colonies from their target lists. The story became legend. The human mother who loved her child so much that she made time stand still. And in Whispering Valley, the crystals still sing with echoes of that love, a reminder that some forces in the universe are stronger than death, stronger than time, stronger than anything that tries to harm the innocent. The galaxy had learned a lesson it would never forget. Never threaten a human child. Because human mothers can do impossible things when their children are in danger, and the universe itself will help them do it.